The Liberal government is expected to reveal soon its list of the first projects of national interest that it hopes to fast-track. Multiple sources are telling our colleagues at Radio-Canada this morning that list, this initial short list, will not include oil pipelines. Again, that's at least not for now. A Liberal source is saying the absence of a pipeline on the initial list doesn't mean it will never happen, and that approval of a natural gas pipeline could also be possible. Prime Minister Carney has previously said the involvement of a private developer is essential for a pipeline project to move forward. It's a great starting point for our conversation this week with Catherine Cullen, who hosts The House on CBC Radio and gives us some time on Wednesdays. Good to see you again, Catherine. Welcome back.
Lovely to see you, Heather. Nice.
We've been having some reporting from Janice and from Rafi, who is in Edmonton, about this shortlist. As Radio-Canada has been reporting, no pipelines for now. Nobody's come forward yet. No company has come forward yet. Can you give us any information that you might have in terms of why not and why pipelines aren't on this first list?
Well, this is the question, right? The Prime Minister has been pretty clear that they want a lot of this work driven by the private sector and that there was going to need to be a private sector proponent. Earlier this summer, the Prime Minister was out at the Calgary Stampede and he said it was highly, highly likely that there would be a pipeline on Ottawa's list of at least potential projects. Now, if you listen to, for instance, Alberta Premier Danielle Smith, Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre, they have blamed the regulatory environment. They have basically said it's Liberal policies around these things that are prohibiting companies from coming forward. And Danielle Smith has a longer list of 9 policies she'd like to see changed. I saw she put out a tweet recently where she's got it down to about 3, but she is expected to meet with the Prime Minister today. On the one hand, no doubt she will be disappointed because she has suggested that getting a new oil pipeline built is important for national unity. At the same time, the lack of private proponent means that it's quite difficult for the federal government to move forward with this. Just how flexible is Mark Carney on some of the issues that Danielle Smith and Pierre Poilievre have been prodding him about? I think that remains to be seen. One of them, for instance, eliminate the tanker ban on the West Coast. There are comments that Mark Carney has made in the past where he has perhaps suggested that there might be some flexibility on that issue, but no sense that he is on the cusp of going ahead with this right now. They want to see things changed, like what the Conservatives call the No More Pipelines bill. It's the Impact Assessment Act under Justin Trudeau, piece of legislation that helps that manages how major projects get built in this country. And again, Mark Carney has basically said, I have a way of working within the existing system, whereas both Premier Smith and Pierre Poilievre have said, well, you need to more or less start from scratch. Not a sense that Mark Carney is going to go there. So I think we're waiting to see how the meeting goes with Premier Smith today, and also the question of what else is on that first short list, Heather. If it's not a pipeline, what else will we see?
You took the words right out of my mouth, Catherine, except I was going to say 7:30, as we saw on the screen, 7:30 p.m. Eastern time for that meeting between the Prime Minister and the Premier. Of course, full coverage to come here on CBC News Network. So if not pipelines, what could be there, Catherine?
Well, certainly we know there's enthusiasm for projects that deal with building up ports in this country. I think it's really interesting to watch the conversation about what's happening in Canada's north. You know, part of the political discussion that has sort of risen to the top of the public debate in all of this has also been about ensuring that there is Indigenous consent and in many ways participation in a lot of these projects. We know that when it comes to some First Nations rights holders in this country, some of them are not happy with how quickly Mark Carney has proceeded. There is some resistance to perhaps some of these projects. That's very different in the north when it comes to Inuit participation in these projects. There's a lot of enthusiasm there. It's also very expensive to build things in the north. So there's a place to look where on the one hand, it certainly checks some of the criteria that the Prime Minister has set out. I think we want to look at what the scope is overall, like how, where do we see projects that speak to the entire country? How big is the list overall? I mean, this is a key piece of what Mark Carney pledged in the last election, right? That he was really going to radically reshape Canada's economic agenda by really getting these projects going, right? Build, baby, build. Well, this is an important step in that equation. How big a step is it? And what exactly does that step look like? The balance between conventional and sustainable energy is going to be interesting to see as well.
Final question for this week, Catherine. We saw how the cabinet members were feeling as they gathered for their retreat or planning session. Now we're going to see all of the Liberal caucus in Edmonton. What's your sense about how they're feeling ahead of Parliament's return next week?
I think that there is broadly a pretty good mood. The Liberals I have been talking to are thinking back to sort of the what was for them dark days of the end of Justin Trudeau's government, where many of them were getting a lot of very negative comments from the people in their ridings, right? Really getting a lot of grief. And now they've been at events all summer. They've been hearing a lot of good things about the Prime Minister. So in that sense, there's a buoyancy that is very different than how things felt a year ago. That said, Heather, we are seeing the rubber hit the road when it comes to things like job losses in this country. The challenge is getting harder. There is, I think, some simmering tension around issues like how exactly Mark Carney plans to proceed when it comes to dealing with issues around climate change. We know from Radio Canada that some Liberals have created their own caucus to try to push for some perhaps more policy on this front, ensure that there's a focus on it. So there's plenty of things simmering, but I think writ large going into this, there is still a sense of optimism that's pretty dramatically different than things were, say, a year ago when Mark Carney was in Nanaimo just as an advisor to the Liberal Party, an economic advisor. Now he's running the country.
Catherine, thank you very much. There'll be lots of fodder for the House this weekend on CBC Radio. Catherine is your host. We'll see you next week, and thank you for the time today.
Thank you.